With the almost non-existent Quake news during the most recent Quake Con, I've been left wondering what the future holds for the franchise, and especially what they could do to bring back and give a small push to this beloved IP that pioneered so much for the gaming industry. Quake is interesting because its settings are varied, featuring battles against eldritch beings, the Strogg, multiplayer arenas, and large-scale warfare. Considering how major game companies today often play it safe by focusing on established franchises to minimize financial risk, it's possible we won't see a new title anytime soon. But here's the thing. While the Quake franchise might not feel like a safe bet for Bethesda to delve into, as it has lost popularity in recent years, hints have been dropped about a sixth game being discussed, if not in development. And with the 30th anniversary coming up in 2 years, there's hope that something new could be on the horizon. So, while we stay cautiously optimistic, let's take a journey through the history of Quake and explore how this game played such a pivotal role in shaping the gaming industry, putting us in a better position to see what could be next.
Get lost exploring the internet.
It's May season. It's the new Nintendo 64.
The 1996 MTV Movie Award.
We will not live in a two-dimensional world.
June 1996. The Nintendo 64 just launched in Japan, marking the beginning of an era filled with 3D worlds and square chess. In that same month, on the PC side of things, Quake was released and shook the entire gaming industry. While polygonal 3D video game worlds existed at least a decade before Quake, the game popularized true 3D gaming on the PC, demonstrating that aesthetically pleasing and smooth 3D graphics were accessible to the average PC gamer. Development for the game dates as far back as 1991, with a promotion in the first Commander Keen trilogy, where it was initially titled Quake: The Fight for Justice.
The official Quake mission packs.
The game received 4 expansions, including the most recent Dimension of the Past and Dimension of the Machine, featuring a total of 32 monsters, 91 levels, and a theme steeped in eldritch horror. The player takes on the role of an unnamed protagonist, later referred to as Ranger, who is sent through a portal to stop an enemy codenamed Quake. From the start, the influence of eldritch horror is evident, not just in the monsters, but in the level design as well. Today, when you look at Quake, the game might seem visually simple. The environments are basic compared to other titles from the same era, like Tomb Raider or Duke Nukem.
Shake it, baby.
But none of those games capture the same eerie atmospheric feel that Quake does. Gone are the straightforward corridors of Wolfenstein or the flat, Y-axis locked levels of Doom. Quake's levels feel vast, using far more verticality as you can now aim up and down. But what's amazing is that as soon as you start dodging projectiles and maneuvering around enemies, each with its own unique patterns and behavior, the large spaces suddenly feel claustrophobic, especially when you're trying to avoid falling into lava or toxic water while dealing with the relentless creatures. It's such a brilliant feeling of tension. The focus in Quake felt more on creating unique and challenging combat encounters rather than a continuous journey, which meant that environments were designed more for gameplay mechanics than story cohesion.
As a parent, I've never been happier than when my children ask their friends over for an internet computer party.
Quake played a major role in the early days of esports, thanks in large part to the active support of id Software's staff. Not only the single-player campaign was popular, but what the game really pushed out was deathmatch.
Oh, right in the face.
While the term deathmatch had been used in other video games and media before, its modern meaning was coined by game designer John Romero during the development of Doom's LAN multiplayer mode. The deathmatch mode became wildly popular, being played not only at home but also in universities and workplaces. Seeing the growing popularity of multiplayer games, Quake made it easier to set up multiplayer matches. In addition to making all of the campaign maps playable in deathmatch mode, 6 maps were specifically designed for multiplayer.
Mom, get off the phone! I'm playing Quake!
While Quake did support online play, it was primarily designed for LAN gaming. However, many players wanted to take the game online, even though it wasn't easily accessible for everyone. It was often slow and choppy, and without a good internet provider, which most people didn't have, playing online felt more like a chore than fun.
More latency tolerance for the client, so there's less lag, and the network
Then came John Carmack, co-founder of id Software, and released an update specifically to make Quake's multiplayer more playable over the internet. He completely reworked client-side prediction techniques used to minimize the negative effects of high latency connections, which are still in use today.
Which will allow us to get a running tally of everyone's frags.
This update also introduced something groundbreaking, a global ranking system of all players, which has since become standard in every online game, but was quite innovative back then. On August 15th, 1996, 28 years ago, id Software held its first convention that would become a yearly event where thousands of gamers from all over the world will attend to celebrate the company's gaming dynasty. The Woodstock of gaming, a week of peace, love, and rockets. Quake Con.
It's just a family, basically.
It's something my boss doesn't need to understand, my parents, my siblings.
How do gamers game for 96 hours straight? Balls.
I have the defensive rockets at all, but he's just picked up the red.
After the game plan, the same. Oh my god. How did you find that direct, you mad lad?
The first year, by the end of the weekend, 100 people showed up for a LAN tournament, each lugging their bulky beige monitors and computers to spend the entire event locked in death matches, mostly on Quake I and Doom. T-shirts and small prizes were given to the winners. The event clearly made a splash in the community because the following year, QuakeCon 1997 drew in around 650 attendees. The focus was still on Quake I, but shifted to its multiplayer version, Quake World. This was the start of a movement that would grow bigger each year, with small rewards like shirts and goodies eventually being replaced by cash prizes, and will go on to become a cornerstone of competitive gaming. Quake's fun gameplay, immersive single-player campaign, and fast-paced multiplayer action sparked a wave of influence that spread throughout the gaming industry, particularly in modding. While id Software's earlier games supported modding, creating content for them was far more challenging. Doom, for example, required players to delve into WAD files to change sprites, textures, sounds, and create maps. If you wanted to tweak game stats, you had to use tools like dehack to alter the game's code just to make minor adjustments. Quake, however, was built from the ground up with modding in mind.
Lots of people that learned programming so they could do QC and make mods for it, and it's had a positive impact on the way the industry's gone and people that have gone into it.
John Carmack developed QuakeC, a custom scripting language designed to give modders significantly more control over the game's mechanics, allowing for deeper and more complex modifications.
I like the shotgun, but I want it to be more badass. You go in there and say, okay, now it does 200 points damage, and then you go around with a big grin on your face, blowing up monsters all over the game.
The game's directory structure also made it easier to add custom maps and mods.
A new program to compress and extract, because the stuff that we were using before would not do a subdirectory, because this was the first id game with a subdirectory, the id1 folder.
Moreover, Quake popularized the use of console commands, giving players the ability to adjust in-game settings on the fly with ease. This open approach to user-generated content led to the creation of some of the most iconic mods and features in gaming history. For example, the famous game Team Fortress Classic was based on Team Fortress, a mod for Quake. After the success of the mod, the creators began working on a sequel. Recognizing its potential, Valve hired the team to develop Team Fortress 2 using the modified Quake engine that powered Half-Life. Another example is the all-too-familiar Capture the Flag game mode, which has been included now in so many games.
Blue flag taken.
Flag acquired.
Red team has the
I was surprised to learn that it originated from a Quake mod called 3 Waves Capture the Flag, created by David Kirsch, an American video game programmer and level designer who propelled his career in the industry, working for id Software and later for Retro Studios. The mod also introduced the famous grappling hook and runes that could be gathered during the game to enhance abilities, like dealing more damage or moving faster. Sadly, Quake I marked the end of the classic names at id Software. Due to internal conflicts and burnout, many key members, including Romero and Peterson, resigned after the game's release. The remaining team chose to shift the thematic direction of Quake significantly, moving away from Lovecraftian horror to a more technological and futuristic setting.
The sequels are one step too far. Scream 2, rated R.
On it. Just slightly ahead of our time.
Proton. This is my film, Quake II. I love story.
Then we have Quake II, the sequel, but not really a sequel to Quake I. Released in 1997, it sold a bit less than the original, with around 1 million copies. The plot, inspired by the 1961 movie The Guns of Navarone, unfolds during humanity's war against the Strogg, a horrifying alien race of half-mutant, half-machine creatures.
Kevin MacLeod has taken over as project manager to make sure that the levels and art and monsters and all those things are done and coordinated.
Quake II and its 3 expansions brought in a more story-driven approach that id Software hadn't delved into before. Instead of a single hub level linking to each episode or a find the exit progression like Doom, the game introduced mission-based objectives, giving players clear goals and a sense of purpose, while also featuring much larger levels than the original Quake. It also offered the ability to travel back and forth between levels, which was not only necessary for completing certain objectives, it made the maps feel more interconnected, as if you were navigating through a complex with distinct areas, each serving a unique purpose for the Strogg. The id Tech 2 engine introduced groundbreaking advancements in real-time 3D rendering, including dynamic lighting, colored lighting effects, and complex geometry.
Doing all the character animations and polygon models and stuff, and doing an excellent job there.
The visual design, though more muted, focuses on a style that highlights Strogger suffering from industrialization and the impact of technology on their civilization. This creates an environment that feels relatable and immersive. The enemies were also significantly improved, with each Strogg having distinct behaviors. Compared to other id titles like Doom, where most demons become more dangerous in greater numbers, the Strogg are individually more threatening, making smaller but as thrilling encounters. The behavioral aspects of each enemy have also been updated. All those small but nice details help make the game feel more natural, despite the alien futuristic theme is made from.
What really set Quake II apart was the explosion of multiplayer mods.
Staying true to its predecessors, Quake II was highly praised by both casual players and competitive enthusiasts. The ability to customize matches, create mods, and develop player-made content transformed Quake II into a hub of ever-evolving, community-driven fun. More mods emerged, some so successful they became standalone games like D-Day Normandy. What's interesting is that D-Day Normandy was playing in the World War II setting long before it became mainstream, with titles like Medal of Honor, Call of Duty, and Day of Defeat. Another major mod was Action Quake II. Originally a total conversion, it aimed to replicate the look and feel of an action movie, fast-paced and with a semi-realistic damage system. The mod became so popular that id Software wanted to include it in their Quake II expansion, Netpack 1 Extremities. Developers of Action Quake II later went on to work on Action Half-Life and a small game you may have heard of, Counter-Strike. It's so crazy that, after 26 years of its release, the modding community keeps Quake II thriving by creating new content alongside the official remastered version. Dedicated groups like Map Center frequently host events where mappers can sharpen their skills and provide fresh content for players to enjoy. There's also a steady stream of multiplayer maps and total conversions, including recreations of console ports like the PlayStation version. All of this driven by the sheer passion and love that players have for the game. All of this modding and community-driven content is crucial to understanding the continued relevance and future potential of the Quake franchise.
Resident Evil
faces the hardest Poke battle of his life as the...
But now we go from some racing action to some running action, because you do a lot of that in this next game.
As I've learned, because I spent all my time at work playing the beta of Quake III Arena.
You think this is the end of it, or you think we'll always see more Quake games?
No, this is the last Quake product.
Quake III, along with its expansion Team Arena, takes the action-packed combat that made Quake so popular and crams it into tight arenas with enhanced physics and movement for epic, lightning-fast face-offs. The previous games had a bit of story going on, but now you're dumped into some place, handed a gun, and given a pat on the back with a "go kill for your gods" kind of vibe. But don't worry. For the more lore-hungry peeps you there, they offered character sheets detailing backstories, showing a variety of different characters from different time and dimensions, even some from other games like Doom. It's all about skill, movement, and reflexes. If you die, it's on you and no one else. The game offers a variety of power-ups and weapons, with each map having a set of them scattered around, pushing the player not only to learn the layouts, but also the positions and availability of key items on each map. Although Quake III initially faced some criticism for its high system requirements and perceived lack of originality, especially with weapons that felt somewhat bland, fast-paced, action-packed games with such tight controls and exceptional balance were rare at the time. Because of this, Quake III quickly gained popularity, not just for online play, but as the go-to game for competitive tournaments. And when I say popular, I mean it didn't just influence competitive first-person shooters, it helped shape the foundation of modern esports. Don't get me wrong, esports-like events existed well before Quake. Competitive gaming can be traced back to October 19th, 1972, when Stanford University hosted the Intergalactic Space War Olympics, where the grand prize was a year's subscription to Rolling Stone. The late 70s and early 80s saw high-score competitions rise in popularity, thanks to games like Space Invaders. In the early 80s, Twin Galaxies, an organization dedicated to documenting high scores and promoting competitions, was created. The 1990s brought the rise of fighting games like Street Fighter, which led to the establishment of the EVO Championship in 1996, alongside notable tournaments like the Nintendo World Championships in 1990 and 1994. One of the earliest esports events in the United States was the Red Annihilation Tournament, held in May 1997. In the final match, Dennis Thresh Fong faced off against Tom Entropy Kimsey from Impulse 9 on the map Castle of the Damned. The prize? None other than John Carmack's personal Ferrari. Carmack even agreed to cover Fong's insurance for a year so he could enjoy his new car without any worries. Then came the CPL, Cyberathlete Professional League, one of the most influential organizations in esports, leading the way in corporate sponsorships for teams. Building on the success of the 1997 Frag Quake tournament, the CPL partnered with Quake Con to host an event at the Dallas Infomart in July 1998. Initially focused on Quake, the CP League soon expanded to include other games like Counter-Strike, with each event offering progressively larger cash prizes. By 2000, Quake III had cultivated a thriving community with clans, forums, and fan sites. Professional players like Jonathan Fatality Wendell became gaming celebrities. He became a household name in the gaming world, securing sponsorships from major companies and even licensing his name for gaming hardware.
Well, basically with the bigger mouse pad, you're going to have a bigger area to work on.
It was no longer just about being the best. It was clear that gaming had evolved into a legitimate career path. This realization brought in more players and fueled the rise of new titles that built on the momentum Quake III had created. To the disappointment of Quake fans, CPL announced on March 14, 2000 that Quake III would no longer be the official game for the World Championship event in December, replacing it with the Half-Life mod Counter-Strike. Many players saw this as the beginning of the end for Quake III's glory days, a prediction that would become reality as the game's prize pools steadily declined year after year. Staying true to its roots, Quake III's open-source nature fostered a vibrant modding community, which produced new maps and game modes. But what really surprised me was that the majority of tournaments weren't played on the vanilla version of Quake III. They were played on a mod called CPMA, Challenge Pro Mode Arena. Thanks to Map Center, I had the opportunity to get some fascinating insights from a member of the CPMA team who was kind enough to explain more about the mod's history. Created by Richard Hooney Sandlin in May 1999, after the release of Q3 Test, CPMA was designed to make the game more exciting and challenging, with a focus on advancing Quake III as a professional sport. By August 28, 2000, the final version of CPMA 1.0 was released, becoming the competitive standard for Quake III tournaments in 2006, when the CP League officially announced it as its mod of choice for competitions. So why did CPMA become so widely used in competitive events? Vanilla Quake III lacked features now considered essential, like warm-up and ready-up options, customizable HUDs, and advanced server and rendering settings that gave players more control over their experience. At first, there was another popular mod called OSP, Orange Smoothie Productions, which catered to those who preferred the vanilla Quake III's rule set, but its development stopped, and CPMA became the go-to mod for competitive players. It supported the game both as vanilla and modified physics experience, with new introduced mechanics like air control, instant weapon switching, rebalanced weapons, and advanced movement techniques, creating a smoother and more refined competitive experience. Despite being multiplayer-centric, Quake III included a single-player mode with all classic game type, but also a 7-tier campaign against impressively skilled bots. Each one had unique weapon preferences, movement styles, and they could even trash talk, making them feel like distinct players rather than just AI with different skins. Quake III featured one of the most successful licensed engines in history, id Tech 3, which was used to create games like Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, and Star Wars Jedi Knight 2. It competed with Unreal Engine, which brings us to our next point. Quake III was released in an interesting situation, coming out just a month apart from a similar game, sparking a two-sided battle among gamers, each claiming which was the best. Like Coke versus Pepsi, Mac and PC, Peter Gabriel or Phil Collins. For Quake, it was, and still is, the never-ending battle of which is better, Quake III or Unreal Tournament. Unreal Tournament felt more epic. You moved slower, sure, but the game was far more customizable. The maps felt more varied and creative. The weapons had dual firing modes that brought even more chaos, and mods added extra depth with objective-based scenarios, where the game shine is in the single-player aspect. The AI was similar to Quake, yet the customization made it feel far more advanced, with bots that acted differently, like staying in towers to snipe or hanging back to protect the flag. They were also given the ability to communicate by voice instead of just writing, which really added to the immersion. Quake III is more precise, personal, with gameplay that rewarded skill and mastery, and give you full control to overcome the others. The game seems more polished and refined in terms of core mechanics, but Unreal Tournament offered more content for players seeking casual fun over competitive precision. Competitive is really the key word to remember, especially as we move toward the end of the Quake titles.